In the most explosive courtroom moment in Judge Judy's 25-year career, an entitled neighbor known as Fat Karen made a claim so outrageous, so completely insane, that it left the entire courtroom in stunned silence. She accused her innocent elderly neighbor's house cat of running a sophisticated surveillance operation against her. But what Karen didn't know was that her own evidence would expose a secret so embarrassing, so humiliating, that Judge Judy's final verdict would become the most savage takedown in television history. This moment went viral within hours, and what you're about to witness will restore your faith that justice still exists in America. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The courtroom was packed that Tuesday morning. Camera crews positioned themselves for what they thought would be another routine neighbor dispute. The audience settled into their seats expecting the usual drama. But none of them, not even the seasoned court staff who had seen everything, were prepared for the sheer insanity that was about to unfold. Judge Judy herself would later say this case broke every record for the most ridiculous claim she'd ever heard. And the secret Karen was trying to hide? It was captured on her own security cameras. Karen Mitchell stormed into that courtroom with the confidence of someone who believed she was about to expose the crime of the century. Her folder bulged with what she called irrefutable proof. Her eyes blazed with the righteous fury of a woman convinced she was the victim of an elaborate neighborhood conspiracy. She had no idea that within the next 20 minutes, she would become the laughingstock of the internet and face the most humiliating defeat of her life. The elderly woman sitting across from her, Mrs. Sarah Chen, clutched her purse nervously, wondering how a simple house cat could cause such chaos. But here's what makes this story absolutely incredible. Karen's own evidence, the very proof she was so confident would vindicate her, contained footage that revealed exactly why she was really angry about that cat. And when Judge Judy saw it, when she realized what Karen had been trying to hide all along, her response was so brutal, so perfectly delivered, that the courtroom erupted into chaos. The secret wasn't about spying at all. It was about something far more embarrassing that Karen desperately hoped would never come to light. The tension in that room was electric. You could feel it crackling through the air as Karen prepared to present her case. Mrs. Chen sat quietly, still confused about why loving her cat had somehow made her a defendant. Judge Judy leaned forward, her famous sharp gaze already detecting something wasn't right. The audience held their breath. And somewhere in Karen's folder of evidence lay the smoking gun that would destroy her case and expose a truth so mortifying that it would haunt her forever. What happened next changed everything. Not just for Karen, not just for Mrs. Chen, but for everyone who witnessed it. This wasn't just about a cat anymore. This was about entitlement meeting reality in the most spectacular way possible. This was about a woman so consumed with her own delusions that she walked straight into the most devastating verbal destruction Judge Judy had ever delivered. And the best part? Karen did it to herself. Before we dive into this unbelievable courtroom massacre, smash that like button if you love seeing entitled people get exactly what they deserve. And subscribe for more jaw-dropping Judge Judy moments that'll make your entire day. Trust me, you're going to want to share this one with everyone you know. The stage was set for what would become the most talked-about courtroom showdown in television history. Judge Judy's courtroom had seen plenty of entitled people over the years, but nothing quite like what was about to unfold. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting dramatic shadows across the room as two neighbors prepared to battle over what might be the most ridiculous lawsuit ever filed in American courts. On the left side of the courtroom sat Karen Mitchell, a 45-year-old woman whose very presence seemed to suck the patience out of everyone around her. Her bleached blonde hair was pulled back in what could only be described as a militant bun, and her face wore the permanent scowl of someone who had made complaining her full-time profession. She clutched a thick manila folder against her chest like it contained state secrets, her knuckles white with the intensity of her grip. Her outfit screamed middle management authority, complete with shoulder pads that hadn't been fashionable since the 1980s. This was a woman who had clearly appointed herself the unofficial sheriff of Maple Street, and she was convinced she had uncovered the crime of the century. Karen's eyes darted nervously around the courtroom, but her jaw was set with the determination of someone who believed she was about to expose a conspiracy that reached to the very heart of her suburban neighborhood. She had been preparing for this moment for months, documenting what she called evidence with the obsessive dedication of a private investigator. Her neighbors had learned to cross the street when they saw her coming, and the local HOA had stopped returning her calls after complaint number 47 about various infractions she'd observed from her bedroom window. Across the aisle sat Mrs. Sarah Chen, a 72-year-old retired librarian whose gentle demeanor was as calming as Karen's was agitating. Her silver hair was neatly styled, and she wore a simple navy cardigan that spoke of quiet dignity and decades of dealing with difficult people with grace. Her weathered hands rested peacefully in her lap, occasionally trembling slightly with the nervousness of someone who had never been in a courtroom before. Mrs. Chen's eyes held the confused sadness of a woman who couldn't understand how loving her pet had somehow landed her in legal trouble. She had lived on Maple Street for over 20 years, quietly tending her small garden and caring for Whiskers, her beloved orange tabby cat who had been her companion since her husband passed away 5 years ago. Mrs. Chen was the kind of neighbor everyone wished they had, the one who brought cookies to new residents and never complained when kids' soccer balls ended up in her yard. She had tried repeatedly to resolve whatever issue Karen had, even offering to build a higher fence. But nothing seemed to satisfy her increasingly erratic neighbor. Between them, like a force of nature preparing to unleash fury, sat Judge Judy herself. At 81 years old, Judge Judith Scheindlin had perfected the art of cutting through nonsense with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Her dark hair was styled in its signature no-nonsense cut, and her black robe seemed to absorb the light, making her appear like an avenging angel of common sense. Her sharp eyes missed nothing as they surveyed the two women before her, already sensing that this case was going to be something special. Judge Judy had built her reputation on dismantling the cases of people who tried to waste her time with frivolous lawsuits, and something about Karen's aggressive posture and Mrs. Chen's bewildered innocence told her this was going to be one for the ages. Her pen tapped rhythmically against her desk, a warning sign that anyone familiar with her show would recognize as the calm before the storm. She had already reviewed the basic facts of the case, but nothing could have prepared her for the absolute insanity that was about to unfold. The courtroom audience was packed tighter than usual, word having somehow leaked that this case involved accusations so bizarre that even the court staff were curious to see how it would play out. Reporters had positioned themselves strategically, sensing that whatever was about to happen might just break the internet. The air hummed with anticipation as everyone waited for Judge Judy to call the court to order. In the defendant's corner, Mrs. Chen's court-appointed advisor whispered reassurances, though privately he was baffled by a case involving alleged feline surveillance. Meanwhile, Karen's lawyer looked like he was already regretting taking this case, his expression somewhere between embarrassed and terrified of what his client might say once she got in front of the microphone. The moment was electric with possibility. Two neighbors, one ridiculous accusation, and the most no-nonsense judge on television. What could possibly go wrong? Everything was about to change, and Karen had no idea that her carefully planned legal victory was actually going to become her most public humiliation. The moment Judge Judy called the court to order, Karen Mitchell shot up from her seat like a rocket fueled by pure indignation, her folder clutched against her chest. She marched to the podium with the confidence of someone who believed she was about to expose the scandal of the century. The courtroom fell into expectant silence. Cameras zoomed in and everyone leaned forward to hear what could possibly justify dragging an elderly woman to court over her house cat. What came out of Karen's mouth next was so spectacularly insane that it would be replayed millions of times across the internet. "Your Honor," Karen began, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion, "I stand before you today as a victim of the most diabolical invasion of privacy imaginable. My neighbor has turned her innocent-looking cat into a sophisticated surveillance weapon designed to destroy my peace of mind and violate my constitutional rights." The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Judy's famous eyebrows shot up like twin rockets. Mrs. Chen's mouth fell open in complete bewilderment. Even the bailiff did a double take. Karen opened her folder with theatrical flourish, pulling out what she dramatically called Exhibit A. "This orange tabby cat, which goes by the code name Whiskers, has been conducting systematic reconnaissance missions against my property for over 4 months. Every single day at exactly 2:15 p.m., it positions itself at Strategic Surveillance Point Alpha, which most people incorrectly call my fence." She held up a blurry photograph of an orange cat sitting peacefully in a sunny spot. "Notice the calculating stare, the alert posture, the deliberate positioning for maximum visual access to my backyard activities." The audience began to shift uncomfortably, some covering their mouths to hide growing smiles. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her expression morphing from curiosity to barely contained disbelief. Karen, completely oblivious to the room's reaction, pressed on with increasing fervor. "But that's not all, Your Honor. I have documented evidence of coordinated intelligence sharing between this primary operative and other neighborhood cats. They conduct what can only be described as briefing sessions near the community garbage bins every Tuesday and Friday evening." Mrs. Chen finally found her voice, speaking with the gentle bewilderment of someone who had stumbled into an alternate reality. "Your Honor, Whiskers is just a normal house cat. He likes to sit in the warm afternoon sun by the fence. That's what all cats do. Karen spun around, pointing an accusatory finger like she had just caught a master criminal in a lie. Aha! She admits the operative has a cover story. And notice how she calls it normal behavior. Classic misdirection tactics. Judge Judy's jaw tightened as Karen pulled out more papers, her excitement building to a fever pitch. I have also documented suspicious behavioral patterns suggesting advanced training. This cat responds to hand signals from the defendant, maintains unusual alertness during my outdoor activities, and I swear it's been photographing me with its eyes. The courtroom erupted in barely suppressed laughter. Judge Judy's famous glare was now locked onto Karen like a laser beam, and everyone could sense that something explosive was about to happen. What happened next will go down in courtroom history as the most spectacular self-destruction ever captured on television. Karen, riding high on her own delusions of legal brilliance, reached into her folder and pulled out what she proudly announced as her smoking gun evidence. The confidence radiating from her face was about to be shattered in the most humiliating way possible, and she had absolutely no idea what was coming. Your Honor, Karen declared with the smugness of someone who believed she had just won the lottery, I present to you irrefutable photographic evidence of this surveillance operation. She triumphantly held up a stack of printed photographs, each one more pathetic than the last. The first photo showed Whiskers lying peacefully in a patch of sunlight, his eyes half closed in what any reasonable person would recognize as pure contentment. Notice the predatory stance and the calculated positioning for maximum intelligence gathering, Karen announced, completely serious. Judge Judy took the photographs with the expression of someone examining evidence of alien abduction. Her eyes narrowed as she flipped through image after image of a completely normal house cat, doing completely normal cat things. Whiskers sleeping on a warm rock. Whiskers stretching in the morning sun. Whiskers grooming himself with the dedication that only cats possess. Each photograph was more innocent than the last, and with each one Judge Judy's famous incredulous stare intensified. But Karen wasn't finished with her evidence presentation. She pulled out a hand-drawn map that looked like it had been created by a conspiracy theorist having a mental breakdown. Red arrows pointed everywhere. Circles marked surveillance zones, and dotted lines showed what Karen called patrol routes. This tactical map reveals the full scope of the operation, she announced proudly. As you can see, the cat has established multiple observation points for comprehensive coverage of my property. The map was so absurd that even Mrs. Chen, despite her confusion and stress, couldn't suppress a small smile. Then came the piece de resistance that would seal Karen's fate forever. With the flourish of someone revealing a masterpiece, Karen produced a printed email she had sent to the Homeowners Association. Judge Judy read it aloud, her voice dripping with disbelief. I am writing to demand immediate action regarding the implementation of anti-feline surveillance countermeasures in our neighborhood. The threat level has escalated beyond acceptable parameters. The courtroom erupted in barely controlled laughter. Mrs. Chen, speaking with the patience of someone who had clearly dealt with difficult patrons during her librarian days, gently explained, Your Honor, Whiskers is 14 years old. He can barely make it up the stairs to his food bowl. The only thing he surveys is where the warmest spot of sunlight is going to be each afternoon. Her words carried the weight of simple truth that made Karen's elaborate conspiracy theories sound even more ridiculous. Judge Judy set down the evidence with the careful precision of someone handling radioactive material. Her expression was a masterpiece of controlled fury, and everyone in the courtroom could feel the storm that was about to break. Karen stood there beaming with pride, having absolutely no clue that she had just handed Judge Judy the ammunition for the most devastating verbal destruction in television history. What happened next will be remembered as the most savage judicial takedown in the history of television. Judge Judy slowly placed Karen's ridiculous evidence on her desk, her movements deliberate and controlled like a predator preparing to strike. The silence in the courtroom was deafening as everyone held their breath, sensing that they were about to witness something legendary. Judge Judy's eyes locked onto Karen with laser-like intensity, and when she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of 25 years of dealing with the most ridiculous people on earth. Ma'am, Judge Judy began, her tone deceptively calm, in my quarter-century on this bench, I have heard some truly spectacular nonsense. I have listened to people blame their neighbors for everything from alien abductions to government mind control. But this, she gestured toward Karen's evidence with barely contained disgust. This might be the most idiotic waste of this court's time I have ever encountered in my entire career. Karen's confident smile began to falter as Judge Judy's voice started to rise like a gathering storm. You are standing in my courtroom under oath, telling me with a straight face that a 14-year-old house cat is conducting military-style surveillance operations on your backyard barbecues? The audience was frozen, afraid to even breathe as Judge Judy's legendary fury began to build. Are you completely out of your mind, or do you just think everyone else is? The courtroom erupted as Judge Judy's voice thundered through the room like the wrath of an angry god. Karen's face went white as paper, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Mrs. Chen sat in stunned amazement, having never seen anyone defend her so fiercely. The audience was on the edge of their seats, phones out, capturing every second of this historic moment. But Judge Judy was just getting started. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing with the fury of someone whose intelligence had been personally insulted. This poor woman, she pointed toward Mrs. Chen, this elderly lady who probably bakes cookies for the neighborhood children, is sitting here accused of running some kind of feline CIA operation because her cat likes to nap in the sunshine. Her voice cracked like a whip. Do you hear yourself? Do you understand how completely insane you sound right now? Karen tried to speak, her voice barely a whisper. But, Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows... Judge Judy cut her off with the force of a hurricane. Evidence? You call blurry pictures of a sleeping cat evidence? You call a crayon drawing that looks like it was made by a 5-year-old having a tantrum evidence? The crowd gasped as Judge Judy's voice reached levels that shook the courtroom walls. Lady, that cat is doing what every cat in America does every single day. It sits in the sun, it sleeps, it minds its own business. The only surveillance operation happening here is you spying on your neighbors and inventing conspiracy theories because you apparently have nothing better to do with your pathetic life. The audience exploded into applause and cheers, some people jumping to their feet. Karen stood frozen, finally realizing that her brilliant legal strategy had just become her complete and total humiliation. Judge Judy wasn't finished, and what she said next would become the most quoted line in courtroom television history. Judge Judy straightened in her chair, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade forged in righteous fury. The courtroom held its collective breath as she prepared to deliver what would become the most savage verdict in television history. Her eyes never left Karen's increasingly pale face as she spoke the words that would destroy Karen's delusions forever. Not only are you not getting 1 penny from Mrs. Chen, Judge Judy announced with surgical precision, but you are going to pay her legal fees, court costs, and damages for wasting everyone's time with this absolute lunacy. That's $3,000. Karen's jaw dropped so fast it nearly hit the floor. The courtroom exploded into thunderous applause and cheers that shook the very foundations of the building. But Judge Judy wasn't finished delivering Karen's humiliation. She leaned forward with the smile of someone about to deliver the killing blow. And furthermore, I'm ordering you to write a formal handwritten apology letter to Mrs. Chen for this harassment. But here's the part that's going to make internet history. You're also going to write an apology letter to Whiskers the cat for falsely accusing him of espionage. The audience erupted into pure chaos. People were crying with laughter, jumping up and down and recording every second on their phones. Karen stood frozen like a statue, her brain unable to process that she was being ordered to apologize to a cat. Mrs. Chen covered her mouth in shock, tears of relief streaming down her face as justice was finally served. Judge Judy delivered her final devastating blow with the precision of a master executioner. Ma'am, the only surveillance happening in your neighborhood is you watching everyone else through your windows like some deranged neighborhood spy. Get a hobby, get a life, and leave this poor woman and her cat alone before I hold you in contempt of court. Karen stumbled out of the courtroom in complete defeat, $3,000 poorer and facing the humiliation of apologizing to a house cat. Justice had never tasted so sweet. What happened next proved that in the age of social media, justice travels at the speed of light. Within 30 minutes of the show airing, clips of Judge Judy's epic takedown were exploding across every platform on the internet. The moment Judge Judy asked, "Are you completely out of your mind?" became an instant meme, with millions of people using it to respond to ridiculous situations everywhere. TikTok users created remixes of her most savage lines, setting them to dramatic music that made the courtroom confrontation look like an action movie scene. Twitter erupted with hashtags that dominated trending topics worldwide. Does your cat Spygate reach #1 globally? Followed by Dr. Judge Judy Justice and Dr. Whiskers Innocent. The cat apology requirement had people crying with laughter, with thousands sharing jokes about Karen having to explain surveillance tactics to a house cat. Late-night talk show hosts spent entire monologues breaking down the case, with Jimmy Fallon doing a dramatic reading of Karen's conspiracy map that had audiences rolling in the aisles. Facebook groups dedicated to the case sprouted overnight, with over 500,000 members sharing their own stories of entitled neighbors and celebrating Judge Judy's brutal honesty. Instagram was flooded with memes featuring Whiskers as everything from a secret agent to a master spy, complete with tiny sunglasses and fake CIA badges. The orange tabby cat had become an international celebrity without even knowing it. Back on Maple Street, the aftermath was equally dramatic. Mrs. Chen returned home to find her mailbox overflowing with supportive letters from strangers around the world, many including donations for cat treats and toys for Whiskers. The elderly woman, overwhelmed by the kindness, spent days reading messages from people thanking her for handling the situation with such grace and dignity. Whiskers, blissfully unaware of his internet fame, continued his daily routine of napping in his favorite sunny spot by the fence. Karen, meanwhile, had become the most mocked person on the internet. Her name became synonymous with entitled behavior and ridiculous complaints. Real estate agents reported that her house went on the market within a week, and neighbors threw a block party to celebrate her departure. The handwritten apology letters she was forced to write became collector's items, with copies circulating online and being turned into merchandise. Judge Judy's savage takedown became required viewing in law schools as an example of how to deal with frivolous lawsuits. Legal experts praised her ability to cut through nonsense and deliver real justice with both humor and authority. The case was studied, quoted, and celebrated as a perfect example of common sense triumphing over entitled delusion. Most importantly, the story gave hope to millions of people dealing with their own difficult neighbors and entitled individuals. It proved that sometimes, justice isn't just served cold. It's served with the perfect combination of fury, wisdom, and devastating wit that only Judge Judy can deliver. Now, incredible viewers, if this story of ultimate justice restored your faith in common sense and left you cheering for truth over entitlement, don't just watch and walk away, take action. Smash that like button so hard your phone cracks. Subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell because we have dozens more shocking Judge Judy moments that will blow your mind. Comment below and tell us which part of Karen's epic destruction was your absolute favorite. And join our membership today for exclusive behind-the-scenes content and early access to the most jaw-dropping courtroom moments that prove justice and common sense are still alive and kicking. Let's celebrate truth, justice, and the American way together. Whoopi Goldberg walked into that ABC studio on October 15th, thinking she was about to have another easy day controlling the narrative, lecturing America about kindness and respect, while the cameras rolled and millions of viewers nodded along with her moral authority. She had her talking points perfectly rehearsed, her trademark dismissive laugh ready to deploy, and that smug confidence that comes from decades of never being challenged by anyone who mattered. But what Whoopi didn't know was that Judge Judy Scheindlin had been sitting on explosive behind-the-scenes footage for 6 weeks. Footage that showed Whoopi's true face when she thought nobody important was watching. Footage involving a 22-year-old production assistant, 3 minutes and 47 seconds of pure cruelty, and evidence that would expose the most shocking hypocrisy in television history. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The moment that destroyed everything happened at exactly 3:22 p.m. during what was supposed to be a celebration of powerful women in daytime TV. Millions were watching live as Whoopi, feeling particularly bold after preaching about workplace respect for 20 minutes, looked directly at the 78-year-old television legend and delivered what she thought would be a clever insult that would put Judge Judy in her place. "Well, at least I don't look like a rat face when I'm angry," Whoopi said with that condescending laugh that had silenced countless view panelists over the years. The silence that followed lasted exactly 5 seconds, but those 5 seconds felt like an eternity, as you could literally watch Whoopi's entire world begin to crumble in real time. Her confident smirk started to fade as Judge Judy's eyes narrowed with surgical precision, her hands folded with the calm of someone who had been waiting months for exactly this moment. And then she delivered 6 words that would become the most devastating comeback in television history. "How's that production assistant doing, Whoopi?" The color drained from Whoopi's face so fast it looked like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Someone in the studio audience whispered, "Oh my God," loud enough for the microphones to catch. And Judge Judy just sat there, calm as a predator who had finally cornered her prey, waiting for Whoopi's response because she knew what everyone was about to discover. She knew about the screaming. She knew about the tears. She knew about the 3-minute tirade that happened just 12 minutes after Whoopi finished a segment about workplace bullying. She knew about the footage that would make Whoopi's moral authority crumble like a house of cards. But most importantly, she knew that Whoopi had just given her the perfect opening to expose the biggest fraud in daytime television. If you want to see how 6 words can destroy a career built on fake moral authority and expose the most shocking celebrity hypocrisy ever caught on camera, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Because what Judge Judy revealed next didn't just end the interview. It started a revolution that changed how America sees their favorite TV personalities forever. Trust me, you've never seen anything like what's coming next. To understand why Judge Judy's 6 words hit Whoopi Goldberg like a nuclear bomb, you need to know exactly who these 2 television titans really are, and why this confrontation was 15 years in the making. Whoopi Goldberg isn't just any daytime TV host. She's the woman who built a $50 million empire by positioning herself as America's moral compass. The voice of reason who sits at that view table every morning lecturing the country about kindness, respect, and treating people with dignity. For over a decade, she's been the ultimate authority on what's right and wrong, shutting down arguments with righteous indignation, demanding civility from everyone around her, and presenting herself as the wise elder who's above the petty drama that defines modern television. But behind those studio doors, multiple sources reveal a completely different Whoopi Goldberg. She runs the View set like a ruthless dictator, deciding who gets to speak, who gets humiliated on national television, and who gets blacklisted from ever appearing on the show again. Her specialty isn't just disagreeing with people, it's systematically destroying anyone who challenges her while hiding behind her image as a champion of free speech and open dialogue. Former staff members describe a woman who screams at makeup artists for using the wrong shade of foundation, berates camera operators for catching her bad angles, and treats production assistants like they're less than human. One former View producer told me off the record that working for Whoopi was like walking on eggshells around someone who could end your career with a single phone call, all while she's preaching about kindness to millions of viewers. On the other side of this battle, you have Judge Judy Sheindlin, and if Whoopi is a fake moral preacher, Judge Judy is a genuine truth warrior. She's the former family court judge who spent 25 years dealing with liars, cheaters, and manipulators before building her own television empire by never accepting excuses, never tolerating fake tears, and never backing down from anyone regardless of their celebrity status or public reputation. Judge Judy doesn't make accusations she can't prove with evidence. She doesn't throw punches she can't land with devastating precision. And she absolutely never bluffs when she's holding a winning hand. What makes Judge Judy so dangerous to people like Whoopi is her background as an actual judge who spent decades reading people's lies, spotting their tells, and exposing their true character under pressure. She's seen every type of manipulator, every brand of fake victim, and every species of bully who hides behind righteous anger. More importantly, she's built her entire reputation on the principle that your public image means absolutely nothing if your private behavior tells a different story. She's the kind of person who quietly takes notes, carefully documents everything, and waits for the perfect moment to reveal what she's learned about who you really are when you think nobody important is watching. The war between these two women started 15 years ago at a daytime television awards ceremony that most people forgot about, but Judge Judy never did. Whoopi was accepting an award for outstanding contribution to daytime television when she decided to take a shot at Judge Judy's courtroom style during her acceptance speech. Some people in this business think being harsh and judgmental makes good television, Whoopi said while looking directly at Judge Judy in the audience. But I believe in showing compassion, understanding, and treating everyone with the respect they deserve as human beings. The cameras caught Judge Judy's reaction, a slight smile that looked polite to most viewers, but anyone who knew her recognized as the expression of someone filing away information for future use. From that moment, Judge Judy began paying very close attention to Whoopi's behavior, not out of petty revenge, but because she genuinely despised hypocrites who built careers on moral authority they didn't actually possess. She started hearing stories from makeup artists who worked on both shows, production companies that serviced multiple networks, and industry insiders who witnessed the massive gap between Whoopi's public persona and her private conduct. Judge Judy realized that Whoopi represented everything she hated most about modern celebrity culture: famous people who lectured others about values they completely ignored in their own lives. Over the next 15 years, Judge Judy watched Whoopi's hypocrisy grow more blatant and more damaging. She saw young staffers quit the industry after being destroyed by Whoopi's behind-the-scenes tantrums. She heard about guests who were humiliated not for their views, but for daring to disagree with someone who saw herself as morally superior to everyone around her. Most importantly, she realized that someone needed to hold Whoopi accountable for the difference between who she pretended to be and who she actually was. Judge Judy decided that someone would be her, and she was willing to wait as long as necessary for the perfect moment to strike. That moment came on October 15th, when Whoopi made the fatal mistake of insulting Judge Judy's appearance while sitting on top of the biggest secret of her career. The smoking gun that would destroy Whoopi's career landed in Judge Judy's hands on September 3rd at exactly 11:47 a.m., delivered by someone Whoopi never suspected would betray her trust. Marcus Rodriguez had been working as a senior camera technician at ABC for 12 years, operating the behind-the-scenes cameras that continuously roll during view tapings to capture B-roll footage and backstage moments. He'd seen plenty of celebrity meltdowns over the years, but what he witnessed on that Tuesday morning was so shocking that he couldn't stay silent anymore. It started with something so trivial it would have been laughable if the reaction hadn't been so devastating. A 22-year-old production assistant named Sarah Chen, Working her first month at ABC after graduating from Northwestern with dreams of becoming a television producer, accidentally brought Whoopi oat milk instead of almond milk in her morning coffee. The mistake happened because Sarah was rushing to prepare for a live taping while simultaneously handling 3 other urgent requests from different View hosts. But Whoopi didn't care about explanations. What Marcus captured on his behind-the-scenes camera was 3 minutes and 47 seconds of pure, unfiltered cruelty that would make your stomach turn. Whoopi didn't just correct the mistake or express disappointment. She launched into a character assassination that reduced Sarah to tears within 30 seconds. "How are you this incompetent?" Whoopi screamed while the girl stood frozen with the coffee cup shaking in her hands. "Are you actually this stupid? Or are you just pretending to be worthless to waste my time? I don't understand how someone with your level of intelligence even graduated from high school, let alone college." The tirade continued with Whoopi threatening to make sure Sarah never worked in television again, calling her a complete failure as a human being, and demanding to know what kind of pathetic parents raised someone this useless. The footage showed Sarah's face crumbling as she apologized over and over while Whoopi continued attacking her character, her intelligence, and her worth as a person. Other View staff members stood watching in horrified silence, afraid to intervene because they knew Whoopi's wrath would turn on them next. The most devastating part was the timestamp showing this happened at 9:23 a.m., just 12 minutes after Whoopi finished taping a segment about workplace bullying, where she passionately declared that anyone who uses their position of power to hurt someone who can't defend themselves is nothing but a coward and a bully. Marcus had filmed thousands of hours of behind-the-scenes footage, but this was different. This wasn't a celebrity having a bad day or losing their temper under pressure. This was calculated psychological warfare designed to break another human being's spirit. He made copies of the footage and spent 2 weeks debating what to do with it. He could leak it to TMZ and probably make decent money. But something about Sarah's broken expression made him want justice rather than profit. That's when he remembered Judge Judy's reputation for holding powerful people accountable for their actions. Through a mutual friend who worked in television production, Marcus arranged to meet Judge Judy at a quiet restaurant in Manhattan. He showed her the footage on his phone, and for 3 minutes and 47 seconds, Judge Judy watched in silence as America's moral authority destroyed a young woman's dignity over a coffee order. When the video ended, Judge Judy looked at Marcus with an expression he would never forget. "This is exactly who I thought she was," she said quietly. "The question is, when do we show America who she really is?" Marcus handed her a flash drive containing the full footage. Judge Judy slipped it into her purse and made Marcus a promise that would change everything. "When the right moment comes, Sarah Chen is going to get the justice she deserves, and Whoopi Goldberg is going to learn what accountability feels like." The ABC special Legends of Daytime was supposed to be Whoopi Goldberg's victory lap, a carefully orchestrated celebration where she would be praised for her decades of moral leadership while sitting next to television royalty. The questions were pre-approved softball pitches. The topics were safe and flattering, and Whoopi's publicist had personally guaranteed there would be no surprises or uncomfortable moments. What Whoopi didn't realize was that Judge Judy had quietly influenced the show's format through her own connections at ABC, specifically requesting that the conversation include a segment about handling criticism and maintaining authenticity in the public eye. For the first 22 minutes, everything went exactly as Whoopi expected. She delivered her practice talking points about empowering women, championing the underdog, and using her platform to spread kindness and understanding. The studio audience nodded appreciatively as she painted herself as a beacon of moral authority in an industry full of shallow celebrities and manufactured drama. Judge Judy played along perfectly, offering supportive comments and sharing her own experiences with grace and professionalism. Whoopi was so comfortable that she started ad-libbing, going off script with additional examples of her own wisdom and compassion. Then host Robin Roberts asked the question that would trigger everything. "Both of you have reputations for being direct, sometimes even tough with people. How do you balance that with treating everyone with respect and kindness?" Judge Judy answered first with her typical honesty. "I am exactly the same person on camera that I am off camera. I treat everyone with the respect they earn through their behavior and their choices. Consistency is everything in this business and in life." That's when Whoopi made the catastrophic decision that ended her career as America's moral authority. Perhaps threatened by Judge Judy's implication about consistency, or maybe just caught up in her own ego, she decided to put the 78-year-old judge in her place with what she thought would be a devastating personal attack disguised as humor. "Well, at least I don't look like a rat face when I'm angry," Whoopi said with that trademark condescending laugh, her eyes sparkling with the cruel satisfaction of someone who thought they delivered the perfect insult. I mean, I try to remember that there are real people watching. Real families. And they don't need to see someone scowling at them like they owe money for rent. The studio audience gave a few uncomfortable chuckles, clearly unsure whether this was playful banter or genuine hostility. Whoopi seemed delighted with herself, apparently convinced she'd scored a clever point about her own superior approach to television. She leaned back in her chair with that smug expression that had become her signature look whenever she felt she'd won an argument. Judge Judy's response came in the same calm, measured tone she had used to deliver verdicts for 25 years. But every syllable was loaded with the precision of a surgical scalpel. Speaking of real families, Whoopi, how's that production assistant doing? You know, Sarah Chen? The one whose family watched her cry for an hour after you called her worthless over a coffee order. The transformation in Whoopi's face was instant and absolute, like watching a mask slip off to reveal the monster underneath. The silence that followed Judge Judy's devastating question lasted exactly 8 seconds. But those 8 seconds felt like watching a car crash in slow motion, as Whoopi's entire world imploded on live television. Her confident smirk vanished so completely, it was like someone had erased it with Photoshop, replaced by wide-eyed panic as her brain desperately tried to process how Judge Judy could possibly know about Sarah Chen. Her mouth opened and closed 3 times without producing a single sound, while her hands gripped the armrest of her chair so tightly her knuckles went completely white. What are you? That's completely inappropriate, Whoopi finally stammered, her voice cracking on every word as she realized she was trapped with nowhere to run. The woman who had spent decades confidently destroying other people on national television suddenly couldn't form a coherent sentence when faced with her own medicine. Judge Judy wasn't finished. Inappropriate? She repeated, raising one eyebrow with surgical precision. What's inappropriate is screaming at a 22-year-old girl for 3 minutes and 47 seconds, calling her worthless, incompetent, and a failure as a human being, all because she brought you the wrong type of milk in your coffee. What's inappropriate is doing that 12 minutes after you finished lecturing America about workplace bullying. The studio erupted in gasps and whispered, "Oh my gods," as the audience realized they were witnessing the most brutal takedown in television history. Cameras caught Whoopi's face cycling through pure panic, desperate anger, and complete humiliation as she searched for any possible escape from the trap Judge Judy had perfectly constructed. "You can't just make accusations without proof," Whoopi said, trying to summon her old authority but sounding more like a cornered animal than a television icon. That's when Judge Judy smiled, the same cold smile that had terrified countless liars in her courtroom. "Accusations? I'm not making accusations, Whoopi. I'm stating facts that I can prove with footage from your own behind-the-scenes cameras. Would you like me to play it right now, or would you prefer to apologize to Sarah Chen first?" The color drained from Whoopi's face so fast, she looked like she might faint on live television. This is harassment. This is a coordinated attack on my character," she whispered, her voice barely audible as the full weight of her exposure crashed down on her. Before Judge Judy could respond, the studio audience began reacting audibly. Someone shouted, "Show the footage," while others started pulling out their phones to capture Whoopi's meltdown. Host Robin Roberts tried to regain control, but it was too late. Social media had already exploded with Dowager Whoopi exposed trending worldwide within minutes. Judge Judy's final blow came with the calm delivery of a death sentence. "The only person who attacked your character, Whoopi, was you. I'm just making sure America finally sees who you really are when you think nobody important is watching. Sarah Chen deserved better than your cruelty, and America deserves better than your hypocrisy. If you think this public destruction was brutal, wait until you see what happened in the next 24 hours when the footage Judge Judy mentioned actually surfaced, and America saw Whoopi's true face for the first time. Make sure you're subscribed because what comes next will shock you even more than what you've already seen." Within 6 hours of Judge Judy's devastating takedown, TMZ obtained the behind-the-scenes footage that destroyed any remaining doubt about Whoopi's character. The 3-minute video showed exactly what Judge Judy had described, but seeing it was infinitely worse than hearing about it. America watched in horror, as their supposed moral authority systematically destroyed a young woman's spirit over a coffee mistake, calling Sarah Chen worthless, incompetent, and a complete failure as a human being, while the girl stood trembling with tears streaming down her face. The backlash was immediate and merciless. Our Whoopi hypocrite exploded across every social platform with over 2.3 million posts in the first day. The View's official Instagram was flooded with thousands of comments demanding Whoopi's firing. Corporate sponsors began quietly pulling their advertisements from time slots featuring Whoopi's segments. Most devastatingly, Sarah Chen herself broke her silence through a statement that went viral within hours. "I stayed quiet because I was afraid of losing my career, but Judge Judy gave me the courage to speak my truth. What happened to me happens to young women in this industry every day. ABC launched an emergency investigation, while Whoopi's representatives desperately tried damage control, but the evidence was undeniable, and the public's rage was unstoppable. America had finally seen behind the mask. 8 months later, the transformation was complete and permanent. Whoopi remains on The View, but her role has been dramatically reduced, her moral authority permanently shattered, and her speaking fees cut by 70%. She's forced to sit quietly while younger co-hosts take the lead on topics she once dominated with righteous lectures. ABC implemented strict workplace policies specifically because of her behavior, including mandatory sensitivity training and anonymous reporting systems for staff complaints. Judge Judy emerged from the confrontation with her legend enhanced, praised across the industry for using her platform to defend someone who couldn't defend themselves. Her new show saw a 40% ratings boost as America celebrated a real authority figure who actually lived by the principles she preached. Most importantly, Sarah Chen received job offers from 5 major networks and now works as an associate producer on Judge Judy's show, where she's treated with genuine respect and dignity. "Judge Judy didn't just defend me," Sarah said in a follow-up interview. She changed the entire conversation about how powerful people treat those who work for them. This story proves that authentic character always defeats manufactured moral authority. Judge Judy showed America that real power doesn't come from lecturing others about values you ignore in private. It comes from consistently living those values when nobody important is watching. She proved you don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to be cruel to be strong. And sometimes the most devastating response to a bully is simply showing everyone who they really are. If this story showed you why genuine integrity always triumphs over fake moral superiority, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible celebrity exposés. Let me know in the comments what was your favorite moment from Judge Judy's masterclass in accountability. Was it the rat face comeback, her surgical precision in revealing the evidence, or the way she stayed completely calm while destroying Whoopi's reputation? Drop your thoughts below and I'll see you in the next video where we expose even more shocking celebrity hypocrites who thought they were untouchable. The most powerful weapon against any hypocrite isn't anger or insults. It's simply revealing the truth at exactly the right moment. Whoopi Goldberg learned that lesson in the most public way possible. The question is, which fake moral authority is going to be exposed next?
The courtroom was electric, the air heavy with anticipation. The audience settled into their seats, murmurs of excitement flowing through the crowd. Today's case was bound to be something special. The bailiff's voice echoed in the room as he called the next case, Barrows versus Crawford. The defendant, Tina Barrows, the wife of a well-known senator, was about to face one of the toughest judges in the country, and no one was sure if she was ready for it. Tina walked into the courtroom with the confident stride of someone used to getting their way. She was dressed in a designer suit, her heels clicking against the floor with every step. Her blonde hair cascaded perfectly over her shoulders, styled just so, as if she were ready for a photo shoot rather than a courtroom battle. There was no sign of worry on her face, no sense of apprehension about what was to come. To Tina, this was just another obstacle to overcome, an obstacle she believed would fall easily before her. She took her seat in the defendant's chair, her posture straight and proud, her arms crossed as if she were already in control of the situation. Tina glanced at the gallery of people who had come to watch the proceedings. Many of them were there for the same reason. This wasn't just a courtroom case, this was a show, a spectacle to be witnessed. Tina Barrows, after all, was no ordinary defendant. She was the wife of Senator Gregory Barrows, a man whose political influence stretched across state lines. She had always walked through life with the sense that she was untouchable, that the rules didn't apply to her in the same way they applied to others. Today, however, she was facing something she hadn't anticipated, a judge who could tear apart the most sophisticated defense with the flick of her wrist. Across the room, James Crawford, a disabled veteran of the Iraq War, sat quietly in his seat. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the chronic pain that had become his constant companion since his time in service. He had fought for his country, serving with pride and honor, and yet here he was, fighting another battle, a battle for justice, not just for himself, but for other veterans like him who had been disregarded and mistreated by people who thought their power and influence could shield them from accountability. James had come to Judge Judy's courtroom hoping to settle a long-standing dispute with Tina Barrows and her husband's office. It wasn't just a simple case of property damage or a disagreement over money, this was about respect. About dignity. He had been trying to secure the medical benefits owed to him as a disabled veteran for months, but when he reached out for help from Senator Barrow's office, he was ignored. Worse yet, he was threatened by Tina herself, told that he was wasting her time, and that men like him should be grateful for the benefits they received. Tina had used her husband's political influence to silence James Crawford and intimidate him into backing down. But she hadn't counted on one thing: Judge Judy. A woman with decades of experience sitting at the bench, a woman who had seen it all: fraud, manipulation, and intimidation. And Judge Judy, unlike Tina, wasn't easily swayed by power or social status. She had spent decades dismantling lies and deceit, and now, Tina Barrows was about to find that out the hard way. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Judge Judy entered. She didn't need to announce her presence, it was felt the moment she stepped into the room. With her commanding presence and no-nonsense demeanor, Judge Judy exuded authority. She didn't make a grand entrance, nor did she waste time with pleasantries. As she took her seat at the bench, her eyes scanned the room, locking briefly with Tina Barrows before moving to James Crawford. There was a quiet yet undeniable power in the way she carried herself, an air of someone who had seen it all and was ready to make the final call. "Let's begin." Judge Judy's voice cut through the room with a sharp precision that immediately commanded everyone's attention. Tina sat up straighter, her posture slightly adjusting as she prepared to speak. She smiled, smugly, arrogantly, as she leaned forward, ready to deliver what she believed was a solid defense. "I'm suing Mr. Crawford," Tina began, her voice dripping with entitlement. "He is making ridiculous claims against me and my husband. All this is another ploy to get money from me. I don't know how he expects to win, but I'm confident I'll walk out of here with my reputation intact." Judge Judy's eyebrows rose ever so slightly, the slightest shift that signaled she had already taken note of Tina's attitude. She didn't speak yet. Instead, she nodded at Tina to continue. Tina's tone became even more condescending as she continued, recounting the events leading up to the lawsuit. Her version of the story painted her as a victim of a man who was clearly exploiting the system for his own gain. She glossed over the threats and insults she had hurled at James Crawford, focusing instead on his supposed disrespect towards her and her husband. She recited legal jargon, relying on her self-made Google degree to strengthen her argument, but it only made her sound more out of touch. As Tina spoke, Judge Judy's sharp gaze never left her. Her silence was more powerful than any words could be. She let Tina finish her diatribe, all the while observing her every movement, every facial expression, and every carefully chosen word. Finally, once Tina had finished speaking, Judge Judy slowly shifted in her chair, her gaze unwavering. She looked at Tina for a long moment before speaking in a calm but firm tone, the kind of tone that instantly sets the tone for the rest of the trial. "Miss Barrows," Judge Judy said, her voice crisp and authoritative, "I don't have time for your theatrics. You've made some serious accusations here, but none of them hold any weight. So let's get to the facts, shall we?" The room seemed to hold its breath as Tina's smug expression faltered for just a fraction of a second. The power in Judge Judy's voice had done what Tina had never expected, it had disarmed her. She wasn't going to control this room. And in that moment, Tina Barrows' facade of invincibility began to crack. It was going to be a long, eye-opening day for her. The courtroom was silent except for the occasional shuffle of papers and the soft hum of the cameras rolling. Judge Judy had already begun her cross-examination, and Tina was about to realize that her carefully constructed story was beginning to unravel. "Let's get one thing straight, Miss Barrows," Judge Judy began, her tone icy but composed. "You've come in here today with your designer clothes and your political connections, but what you fail to understand is that this courtroom is about facts, not power, not privilege, and certainly not about who you think you are." Tina's confident smirk wavered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered, trying to maintain her composure. She leaned forward slightly, ready to respond. "I understand that, Your Honor. But this entire case is about someone trying to manipulate the system for his own gain. I'm simply defending myself," Tina said, her voice laced with defensiveness. Judge Judy let out a small, almost imperceptible sigh before flipping through the papers on her desk. It was clear she wasn't buying Tina's defense. She didn't need to. She had already seen the cracks in Tina's story before the woman even walked into the courtroom. This time, you're going to face the consequences of your actions. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Tina sat frozen, her body stiff with the realization that there was nowhere left to hide. You've played the system, Miss Barrows, Judge Judy continued. You've made a career out of playing the victim, and you've done it at the expense of hardworking people. But that's not going to happen here. Not today. Judge Judy raised one hand, gesturing to the bailiff, who stepped forward with another set of documents. Tina's stomach sank as she saw the bailiff hand the papers over to the judge. These weren't just any papers, these were the final pieces of evidence that would seal her fate. I want you to take a good look at these, Miss Barrows. Judge Judy slid the documents in front of Tina, making sure she saw every word. These are the financial records I've gathered on you. Every settlement payment you've ever received, every business you've extorted, and every fraudulent claim you've made. The pattern is as clear as day. Tina could feel the room spinning around her. She had always prided herself on being able to manipulate situations to her advantage. She had worked the system for years, always one step ahead. But this time, she had met her match. And here's the best part, Judge Judy said with a knowing smile. I've spoken to the victims of your scams. People who had their businesses ruined by you. I've got testimonials from gym owners, restaurant owners, and shopkeepers who all had to pay you off just to make the nightmare stop. They didn't have the resources to fight back, but I'm going to make sure that stops right here. Tina's face had gone completely white. She had thought she could control the situation, that her connection to powerful people would get her out of this mess. But now she saw that all of it had been for nothing. Judge Judy had laid everything out, everything Tina had done, and there was no way out. And now, Judge Judy said with a calm that made the entire courtroom hold its breath, we come to the most important part of this case. The part where I hand down the consequences of your actions. The words hung in the air for a moment, and Tina's chest tightened as she realized just how much trouble she was in. She had never expected things to go this way. She had expected a quick win, a pat on the back from her husband, and another check in her bank account. Instead, she was about to lose everything. The case is simple, Miss Barrows, Judge Judy continued, her eyes never leaving Tina. You lied, you manipulated the system, and you ruined people's lives for your own gain. The weight of those words felt like a physical blow. Tina had no more words to offer. No rebuttals. No justifications. She had been caught, and there was no escaping the truth. Judge Judy was going to hold her accountable. I find in favor of the defendant, Judge Judy declared, the finality of her voice echoing in the silent courtroom. And Miss Barrows, you will pay for your fraud. Tina didn't even have time to react before Judge Judy finished the sentence that would change her life forever. The total damages are $250,000. You will also be banned from filing any further lawsuits under fraudulent pretenses, and you will be required to pay for the legal fees of every single business you've extorted. The room was still. For Tina, the world had come to a crashing halt. The smug confidence that had once filled her had been completely wiped away. She had been exposed for the fraud she truly was. And there's more, Miss Barrows, Judge Judy said, her tone still calm but full of authority. You're also going to be referred to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. The evidence suggests that you've committed fraud, extortion, and conspiracy, and I'm not going to let you get away with it any longer. The reality of what had just been said hit Tina like a freight train. Her life as she knew it was over. She could feel her legs shaking beneath her as the weight of the consequences crashed down on her. The words Judge Judy had just spoken hung in the air, suffocating Tina Barrows. For a moment, time seemed to stand still in that courtroom, as if reality itself was on pause, waiting for the inevitable collapse that was sure to come. Tina couldn't breathe. Her mind raced to process what had just happened. The shame, the fear, and the panic all hit her at once. She had never imagined this would be the outcome. She thought she could charm her way out, that her position, her connections, her manipulative, well-practiced words, would carry her through. But here she was, caught in a trap of her own making, standing before the most formidable judge on television, who had not only exposed her but also dismantled her entire life. The courtroom was dead silent. All eyes were on Tina, and she could feel the weight of every single gaze on her. The shame was unbearable. Her face flushed a deep red, then drained of color, as she realized the gravity of what had just been laid down. $250,000. Criminal investigation. Legal fees. She had spent years climbing, exploiting, and manipulating her way to the top, but in the span of mere moments, she had lost it all. Her future, her reputation, shattered. Miss Barrows, Judge Judy's voice broke through the tension like a clap of thunder. Tina snapped her head up to face the judge, who was now speaking with a deliberate calmness. You've spent years exploiting people's kindness, their hard work, and their vulnerabilities. You've been nothing more than a parasite. The word stung, cutting deep into Tina. She had prided herself on being clever, on being able to manipulate those around her with ease. But now, here she was, humiliated, vulnerable, and exposed for the world to see. Judge Judy continued, her eyes locking onto Tina with an unwavering intensity. This isn't just about money, Miss Barrows. It's about principle. It's about what happens when someone like you takes advantage of the system, when someone like you thinks they can break the law with impunity, and that there won't be any consequences. Well, now you're going to see just how serious those consequences are. Judge Judy's words were chilling. Tina wanted to speak, to plead, to try and wiggle her way out of this, but she couldn't find her voice. She sat frozen, her body stiff, her hands clenched at her sides as she waited for the final judgment to fall. You'll be required to pay restitution to every business you've wronged, Judge Judy said, delivering the blow that Tina had feared most. Every single business you've extorted and destroyed will be compensated for your actions. And those businesses? They have a right to fight back. Tina's mind flashed back to the numerous businesses she had targeted over the years, small, immigrant-owned businesses that had been too afraid to fight back, too overwhelmed by her intimidation tactics to stand up to her. It was all coming back to her now, the long list of businesses that had paid her off just to make her go away. She had destroyed them, and now, she was about to face the consequences of her actions. But the final words were the ones that hit the hardest, the ones that would haunt Tina for the rest of her life. Miss Barrows, Judge Judy said, her voice sharp and unwavering. You've committed fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. You've weaponized the very laws that were meant to protect people. And because of that, you will not be able to escape the legal consequences. You will pay for your crimes, and you will face a public reckoning. Tina felt the world closing in around her. The tears she had fought so hard to hold back began to burn in her eyes. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold on to her dignity, but it was impossible. She had lost everything. The life she had worked so hard to build, gone in a matter of minutes. She felt the weight of her own guilt crushing her. She had betrayed people. She had taken their money, their livelihoods, and she had used the law as a weapon. But the moment that felt the most unbearable was the one where she realized that her disgrace would now be public, broadcast for the world to see. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with Tina. Your actions were despicable. And now, you'll spend the rest of your life cleaning up the mess you've made. You're not just facing financial ruin, you're facing a criminal record. You're facing consequences that will haunt you for the rest of your days. The courtroom was completely still. There were no gasps, no murmurs, just the heavy silence that accompanied the finality of Judge Judy's words. Tina could hardly breathe. Every piece of her life, every illusion of control, had shattered in those few moments of absolute, unrelenting judgment. Court is adjourned, Judge Judy said, her voice a final command that rang through the courtroom. She rose from her seat and began to walk out, her demeanor calm, her authority absolute. The bailiff stepped forward, signaling the end of the session. Tina remained in her seat for a moment, unable to move. Her entire body felt frozen, as though the reality of what had just transpired was too much to comprehend all at once. But there was no escaping it. Tina Barrows, the woman who had once walked into that courtroom with a sense of entitlement and superiority, now sat with her head bowed in defeat, the weight of her crimes weighing heavily on her shoulders. The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of the gavel, which came down with finality. Tina Barrows was still sitting, dazed, her world having completely collapsed around her. It was the worst kind of defeat, not just a loss in court, but the unraveling of everything she had built through lies, manipulation, and exploitation. Judge Judy's voice rang out once again, this time addressing the courtroom as a whole. "Ladies and gentlemen, I hope today serves as a reminder that no one is above the law," she began, her tone resolute. Tina Barrows thought she could use the law as a weapon. She thought she could play the system for her own gain. But today, we saw the law work exactly as it was meant to, it caught up with her. The camera zoomed in on Tina, still sitting in her seat, her face pale and tear-streaked. She had become a symbol of everything wrong with entitlement, someone who thought their privilege could shield them from the consequences of their actions. But the truth was undeniable. Tina Barrows had been caught. And today, she would pay. Judge Judy paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. The courtroom audience, as usual, remained seated, but the air was thick with a kind of quiet reverence. It was as if everyone knew that the moment they had just witnessed was not just another case on Judge Judy's docket, it was an example. A powerful reminder that even the most powerful, the most entitled, could not escape the full weight of justice. Turning to Tina, Judge Judy's expression softened ever so slightly, but her voice still carried the weight of years of experience. "Miss Barrows, I've seen many people like you in my career. People who think they can exploit the law, people who believe they can use the system to hurt others for their own personal gain." She shook her head. "But here's the thing. You weren't just targeting individuals, Miss Barrows. You were targeting vulnerable people, small business owners, immigrants, families who had built their lives from the ground up. You were stealing from them." The words hit Tina like a physical blow. She had spent years convincing herself that she was somehow above the consequences of her actions. She had justified her behavior by thinking that the businesses she targeted were just nameless, faceless entities that didn't matter. But now, she saw the full extent of the damage she had caused. She had destroyed families, driven people to despair, and ruined the livelihoods of those who had trusted her. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed, and her next words were deliberate. "I want to make one thing absolutely clear, Miss Barrows, you will not walk away from this. Not with your wealth. Not with your social status. And certainly not with your dignity." She leaned forward slightly, her voice now low and measured. "The judgment today is just the beginning of the consequences you'll face." The weight of Judge Judy's words wasn't lost on anyone. Tina could feel the sting of truth in every syllable. There was no escaping the inevitable. No way to slither out of the trap she had set for herself. Tina Barrows had been a predator, and now, she would face the full fury of justice. "You are ordered to pay restitution to every business you've wronged," Judge Judy continued, her voice firm. "And that's just the financial side of it. The criminal investigation into your actions is underway. The fraud, the extortion, the emotional devastation you caused these people, those are all criminal offenses. And make no mistake, Miss Barrows, you will face the legal consequences of those crimes." Tina shook her head, her tears now flowing freely. She could feel the room closing in around her, as though the very walls were suffocating her. She had always thought she could outsmart the system. She had always believed that her money and connections could shield her from the consequences of her actions. But now, as the weight of Judge Judy's words bore down on her, she realized how wrong she had been. Judge Judy's voice softened, just for a moment, but the finality was unmistakable. Miss Barrows, there's a lesson here for all of us. You've spent your life thinking that you could take and take without ever giving anything back. But there's always a price. And today, you're paying that price. For the first time in years, Tina didn't know what to say. There were no more lies, no more manipulations. The reality of her situation had fully settled in, and she had no defense. She had thought she was smarter than everyone else, more capable of bending the rules in her favor. But now, she had been exposed as nothing more than a fraud, a predator who had destroyed lives for personal gain. Judge Judy's gavel came down with the final, unassailable strike. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. And Miss Barrows, I trust you'll remember this lesson for the rest of your life: no one is above the law. Not even you. As the courtroom slowly began to empty, Tina remained seated, her head hung low. She had no idea what would happen next. But she knew one thing for sure: her life had changed forever. She had spent years evading the consequences of her actions, but now the time had come. The moment of reckoning had arrived.